So I'm going to say something, and I'm going to sound like some damn troll. I couldn't tell the difference between Cooper Rush and Kirk Cousins, and I'm not joking. If you would have never watched an NFL game and said who's the starter and who's the backup, I'm not joking. I really felt that. Am I nuts?
Well, I think something. The Cowboys defense had something to do with what happened to Cousins. He has his moments.
Yeah.
And I think you said it. I think I saw it on Twitter. You said something about Parsons. We probably need to talk about Parsons at some point because he was unbelievable. He was really good against the Chargers earlier this season, and he was great in this game, and he took it over. I think this is a game that people that maybe Vikings fans that aren't Zimmer fans, and I'm a big Zimmer fan, and I've known him for a long time.
I like him too.
I think Mike is going to take this one personally. I think the fact that they were able to get this thing done with rushing, it's not like they got like a ton. I mean, I thought Zeke made a great play late in the game.
Yes.
I thought that was huge.
I thought, yeah, listen, this is why you pay him a lot of money. Zeke's a great player. That's a Dalvin Cook moment. That's a Zeke moment. There's about three guys, Nick Chubb maybe. But you know what? Beyond Micah Parsons, I think Randy Gregory has been really, really disruptive for the Cowboys, opposing offensive lines. This is one of these years, Matt, and this is the way it works a lot of times in the NFL. It's not a dynasty league, despite what the Patriots have done. To win big in this league, this was Tampa last year. You needed about 6 guys to have career years. And Randy Gregory's having a career year. He's playing great.
Yeah, think about the fact that supposedly their best defender, DeMarcus Lawrence, has not stepped foot on the field yet. They survived this game. I was having visions early of the Nooch, the great Ben DiNucci, on a Sunday night, and I thought, this is not going to go well. And they kind of hung in there. This will be another one. I've told you before when I think the Joneses, like a win means so much to them, the Jones family. This is enormous for them because it's one of the first times ever that they've been that compromised and they've gotten a win, whether it was with Dalton, DiNucci, all these people they've had, Brad Johnson in the past, Brandon Whedon.
Yep.
These things have not gone their way. But to your point on Gregory, this is a game, where they won this game there are a few areas, but one was that drive where all that craziness happened to them, where a stupid call on Gregory when literally he hits a guy that's still in bounds. Okay, that's a bad call. The other one, he kind of shoved a guy and the guy fell down. I mean, there was some real crazy calls. I think there were 3 unnecessary roughness calls on that one drive, and they still held them to a field goal with like 3.5 minutes left. And then you need Cooper Rush to take you down the field, and he somehow gets it done. I mean, that's the kind of win that they really haven't had in the past. And they got it with this is not even a Dalton-level quarterback. I mean, I know we'll have a lot of fun with this, and his family was there. And I think it is funny and maybe kind of true what you said. Cousins is just kind of the where they look the same is quarterbacks like that love to unleash throws off their back foot. And that's what, like, Cousins at some point has just decided, I've got this incredible arm. I can do whatever I need to do. And he just got exposed throughout a lot of that game.
I've been talking about this, Matt. What's happening in the NFL is a good quarterback is no longer good enough. This is where Brady talks about it's a skills competition. Now, Tom had a terrible day, and it happens. I mean, the great one. Tom hasn't had a perfect season yet. I mean, he had a stinker, 2 stinkers last year. He had a stinker. He had 3 stinkers last year. He had a stinker today. But I will say this. Kirk Cousins is good, but that's just not good enough, especially in a division. If you start looking at the NFC, McVay, Stafford. Okay, Aaron Rodgers, LaFleur. Okay, Brady, Arians. Those are great quarterbacks with offensive head coaches. So you give Kirk Cousins Mike Zimmer, who's conservative by nature, and that's the difference to me, Matt, is that if the NFC is not as deep as the AFC, I mean, New Orleans right now, to me, I mean, if Jameis stays healthy, I think they're a leading wild card team. I mean, look around. Washington's a dud. Minnesota's a dud. So, I mean, I think Kirk Cousins with McVay or Kirk Cousins with LaFleur would give him a little extra life. But I think with Zimmer, I think there's no creative exceptionalism with that. And so I think Kirk Cousins is good, but that's not good in 2021. It's not good enough.
No, I agree. And this has been him for a while. He just does good enough to keep getting deals and keep, he's gotten the extensions.
Beating Detroit,
and
beating Chicago. This year, I watched them against Cleveland's defense. He stunk. I watched them in the Arizona game. He lost. I watched them against the Cowboys defense. He's mediocre. Again, you can win 8-9 games with that. But boy, the top of the NFC, Matt, you're going to have to go up against great quarterbacks. Let's talk about this too. We can all bang on McCarthy, but there is something to be said that the team plays their ass off with him. So you and I can roll our eyes at guys, but let's go back to last year between Dan Quinn and Mike McCarthy and Dak. Dak and McCarthy, for all we know, may get along really well. You tell me, you're around the team.
I think it is a really good relationship. I think what McCarthy did that was smart was understand that Kellen Moore and Dak had something that was different from most coach-player relationships. And he sort of let those guys, because they sort of had a bond and a friendship as players first, and then he had the trust of Moore, and they've really sort of grown together. And so I think the best thing you can say about McCarthy is he has thick enough skin to realize when he has a good thing going. And he's not, I get frustrated with some of the things he does. I mean, the special team stuff sometimes can be bizarre, but I like the Jones family loves this guy. He's been perfect. He's fine with Jerry taking the lead and still being out front. And I think what you're about to see is, Kellen Moore is going to have any job he wants, whether that be Chicago or whatever. He's going to have 5 to 10 opportunities wherever he wants to go. He'll go. He could have any of these college jobs if he wanted it. That's how I think coveted. And this was a big win for him because it proved what happens with coaches is they get connected to certain quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And Dak and Kellen have become extremely close. And so there's always this kind of thought, well, is it just because he has this great quarterback? I'm not saying that's fair. But I think in this case, this win, getting it done with a compromised quarterback. And for instance, if they had to go 5 to 6 games with Rush, they'd be very fortunate to go 500. They'd be very fortunate to do that. But they got to win on the road in a tough environment tonight, and it was big.
Yeah, listen, Trevor Siemian got a win over Brady, outplayed him. Mike White got a win over Joe Burrow. I've always said this, like when you don't know a guy's deficiencies, when a guy comes in late, you haven't watched film on him. You don't know his deficiencies. So you can win games. Tebow won 7 straight. You can win games with a lot of guys. Think about this on Sunday. Cooper Rush beat Kirk Cousins. Mike White beat Joe Burrow. And Trevor Siemian beat Brady. Now, if they played next week, it'd be a whole different ball game. But I don't know. As I watch that Cowboy game, I come back to something that if you go, even in the NBA, in the NFL, you do need guys to be having career years. And I think Jerry Jones can take a lot of heat, but he's always been pro player. And sticking with Randy Gregory, he to me is such a disruptive force. If he stays healthy and maintains his level of play, and Micah Parsons is terrific, and you bring back DeMarcus Lawrence, this is a really, really athletic front. That's how it feels to me.
It does. And what they did in controlling that line of scrimmage, and you saw Cousins, he got extremely uncomfortable. And you realize, Colin, they're doing this with defensive tackles that nobody, Odigizua is a rookie. Dorrance Armstrong came out of Kansas. He was maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick years ago. And they just sort of have all these people who no one has a clue about them. And the guys that actually have decent names like Gallimore and DeMarcus Lawrence are not even playing. Urban's out right now. And they're getting all sorts of push. But to your point about Gregory is Jerry's missed on a lot of those kind of guys. Okay,
Yeah.
where a guy that has either mental health issues or marijuana issues. He's had some issues. This is a different guy. This guy had huge substance abuse issues or marijuana issues related to the mental illness. And I really think actually this guy was trying to use that to deal with it. He's tremendous. I'll tell you what he reminds me of, because his size, he's not quite as tall as this guy. But during those 90s teams, Leon Lett he was unstoppable force, and he could line up in the middle. And you see what they do with Gregory is they'll loop him around on those stunts in those guard. They can't pass him off. He's too athletic. So he's shooting those gaps, and they can't do it. And then what's fun to watch too is Parsons is so fast. And you had a good quote about it, or a good tweet, something along the lines of, from an athletic standpoint, he's just sort of separate from all these other players you see.
He doesn't look like other players. He doesn't.
Yes. And so in space, we're conditioned to see a smaller, fast, quick twitch back beat a big dude in space, and they don't beat him. Like, he breaks them down and makes the tackle in space pretty much every time. And that's strange to see.
But, I thought it was interesting. Michael Gallup's also, this has been Cedric Wilson, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, and the tight end. Amari Cooper's an interesting player, because we talked about this, I think, on my show last week. I said Amari Cooper is perfect for the Patriots. He runs great routes. He's totally responsible. He's a hard worker, and they can't draft a receiver. But I thought he had one of the plays of the season for the Dallas Cowboys up that right sideline as I'm watching on television. God, that was a great play by Amari Cooper. It's funny because CeeDee Lamb nationally gets a lot of attention because he's a spectacular talent. He had a big drop, by the way, in this game that could have been a game changer. In Dallas, how are the receiving core discussed? Is Amari Cooper still the guy?
I think Amari is very trusted. I think Cowboys fans are trained to see him late in games on a tennis ball, like you saw him tonight, having some kind of issue. And so I think that is in the back of people's minds, that for whatever reason, sometimes he has a little trouble fighting through games and is not always there for them at the end of games. But he fought back tonight and was huge. So I think there's two things at work. The acrobatic Odell Beckham Jr., I know he's not that great anymore, but that sort of the guy he used to be, that's CD. That's what people think of, the flash and dash, whereas Amari is the dependable. I mean, It's weird to call him a possession receiver, but I mean, I think he's proven that he's one of the best route runners in the NFL. And then you saw it tonight. Cedric Wilson, I mean, think about it. One of the reasons they're not having to rush Michael Gallup back, I think he could be ready for next week. And he was a really good third option. And this Cedric Wilson's a big play type receiver. And he's the one who had the 73-yard touchdown, and he gets in the open field, and he's really good. So, when Gallup comes back, they're going to have like 4 great wide receivers.
It's really interesting. I was talking to Steve Keim, the Arizona Cardinal GM, a couple of weeks ago on this podcast, and he said, Colin, there's never been more good receivers, and there's never been fewer corners. He goes, if you have 3 good receivers, by the time you get to your third receiver against their third best corner, it's a complete and utter mismatch. If you look at the NFC, we all know this, Matt, you're going to have to score points to win the NFC. So the Cowboys' strength is, they pass protect Dak and those receivers. Same with L.A., Stafford and those receivers. Same with Tampa, Brady and those receivers. Same with Arizona, Kyler and their offensive weapons. So Dallas, there's a lot of different ways to win in football. Like in the NFC, Baltimore and Tennessee don't feel like the top of the NFC. They feel very AFC. But I look at Dallas, and I don't mean to be hyper on it, but I'm like, yeah, they match up with all these teams. In fact, I think they have a more consistent pass rush than the Rams. I think Arizona's got a pretty good consistent pass rush, although J.J. Watt's out. I look at this Dallas team right now, Matt, I think they match up with all the top teams in the NFC. I think you can make an argument on a neutral field. Those lines are 1 and 2 point spreads. I really do.
Mm-hmm. And they're about to get, where other people are having to maybe try to use this trade deadline, they're about to get these folks back.
That's right.
And with Lawrence, it's only going to help. And then those young guys that have gotten all this time will only get better. And they're going to, I think even Kelvin Joseph, who they took in the second round, is going to get in there and help them. And he could be a really good corner. I mean, you saw at times, and again, that's what's going to frustrate Zimmer and that whole Viking staff. Diggs, as great as he's been, just gets beat on those crossers. I mean, you see it. He's trailing forever, and you have such some big opportunities, and they just did not take it full advantage. So what happened is Cowboys kind of found their footing in this game, and then fought their way back. But I think this is a great win for them. And then it was funny, that was the biggest drama before the game I've ever seen. Like, I've seen them have game time decision with quarterbacks, and I'm always in touch with the medical folks and everybody, and we're all trying to find out. And Werder and everybody else, I mean, they were down there on the field taking video. Oh, he's talking to this person. He's talking to this down. He was never going to play, and they put him through that entire pregame workout just to screw with Zimmer and to mess with the Vikings and to think, oh, maybe, so in their minds, they did have to prepare for two quarterbacks.
That's right.
And Rush is a different kind of quarterback, does different things, certainly not anywhere nearly as good as Dak. But that whole thing was just a complete show. A game time decision. And it was hilarious because as the media, we just bite on those things. I mean, just breathless updates. Now he's doing this. Now he's on the resistance cords. Now he's and they do have an unbelievable athletic training staff, but everybody was in on this deal. This was sort of a big setup. And but what they did is this: he could have played, and he certainly would have played if it was a playoff game. But I think he'll have a lot more confidence, and the Cowboys will have more confidence in that calf next week.
Okay, so let's look at the Cowboys' schedule right now. So they are running away with their division. So let's look at the Cowboys' schedule. So they got some interesting games coming up. So they host the Broncos. I watched the Broncos. They're a mess offensively. And again, another weak-armed quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater who's not overly athletic, so it plays right into Dallas's front. By the way, then they get Matt Ryan at home, another weak-armed quarterback that's not athletic, plays into Dallas's front. Okay, then they go to Kansas City, but again, Kansas City's a team that can't stop the run. So hope that. But I look at your schedule and I see Teddy Bridgewater and Matt Ryan coming to Dallas. Boy, then we head into Thanksgiving weekend. Raiders at the Cowboys, Cowboys Saints, Cowboys Washington, Cowboys Giants. Boy, there's a lot of wins on this. Washington, Dallas. There's a lot of wins here. Arizona has to come to Dallas. God, I'm what am I? I got to put the pom-poms down here. What the hell's happening with me? I just look at this team and I see an athletic defensive front. I see terrific playmakers on the edge. I see a head coach that kind of lets his coordinators coach. And by the way, I see Zeke and Tony Pollard. I get power. I get quick. I see everything I want if I'm a fan.
I think if I'm going to shoot holes in anything, you got to keep an eye on Tyron Smith. That thing got away from him a little bit tonight. At one point,
he was in the tent.
They had that Inseki over there at left tackle. Mike McCarthy is very stubborn about the offensive line. Now, he did do the inverted. Did you see those formations tonight? They had Lyle Collins and McGovern back in the backfield. So they had seven offensive line. That's another thing about this team. They're kind of fun. They're doing some weird stuff. But what he won't do, like he'll have a guy like Lyle Collins who can play right tackle, can play either of the guard spots, and certainly has the talent to play left tackle. But Mike's kind of stubborn, and if he has a guy that hasn't been lining up at left tackle, he's been practicing this other guy at left tackle. So I would look for that. That one thing they need to do with Collins, if they're going to try to keep him as some kind of backup right now, and he'll be the most talented backup tackle in the game, in the league right now, because he's really, really good. He's just undependable. But they need to start playing him at left tackle. So that's I think for everything looks pretty good. They also are they're Connor Williams is not very good.
Well, Terrence Steele though.
What's that?
Terrence Steele on the right side's been fantastic, has he not?
He's been great. Yeah. I think he's good, and he got all the. You love this offseason stuff. He won all the offseason weightlifting awards. I know you're into that.
I like that stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I was like, Mosley. In the newsrooms I worked at, I would win those awards. I was the hard worker. I'd win the parking space awards. You were out there having a good time and having tequila, being the man about town. I was out there doing sit-ups, getting the parking spot for Channel 3 in Vegas.
I grew up Southern Baptist. I don't even know what tequila looks like.